Hey everybody, welcome Facebook Live friends. I'm gonna do this live so that I clean my beautiful camera and you can see me, and I'm gonna lower that light a little bit if my husband can lower the light a little bit so that we all look a lot better. I hope you guys can hear me. Lower it, el stick. Let me tell you before, Marisel Vera is already waiting for us. But before I introduce her, I know I'm a little late, but I was hosting one of those award shows that we do on Zoom now. Fantastic award show of Hispanic leaders in the technology field, but it was 50 awardees and they read 25 names and described them on camera. So it took a little longer than we expected, but I'm here and estoy bien fancy hoy on my Wednesday wine because I actually have wine. I have wine that was provided by bottles and cans from Lincoln Square, and they have this benefit going on for the Lincoln Square Chamber of Commerce, and I want to tell you about it because they make this kit for you, and I want to read to you the information. I'm so sorry that I'm being so scattered brain, but it's the Lincoln Square Ravenswood Chamber of Commerce. This is the kind of wine that you can, red wine that you can drink cold. And so a portion of the sales of these, they're called, I'm going to tell you right now. Qué desastre, ¿verdad? They're called the Lincoln Square Ravenswood Summer Mix Pack. And the benefits for it, part of the proceeds from this pack of bottles of whatever wine is at lincolnsquare.org. I am so sorry that I'm late and all over the place. Yes, my husband's going to be nice enough to show you the bottle. So this is called La Brusca, and see, it says chilled, this one. I thought it was a bubbly, but no, it's not bubbly, and it's delicious. And you know, I've been having issues with having wine, red wine, en este calor. I've solved my issue. Enfrías este y no hay problema. So you can place your online order before midnight tonight, people. lincolnsquare.org. I'll put the information on, and it helps the Lincoln Square and the Ravenswood Chamber of Commerce with all the events they do, how they help the businesses in the area and the festivals and so on. So it would be wonderful. And it's called the Lincoln Square Ravenswood Summer Mix Pack. All right. So salud. ¿Cómo me les va? ¿De dónde se juntan? Miren, me mandaron, look, they sent me more bottles. So next week I'll do this one, which is Gulp Hablo. And then next week I'll do Rosé. Right? This one's Figure from 2019. I'll find out all the information. But as I was telling Marisel earlier, si es gratis, yo me lo bebo. If they give it to me, I'll drink it. All right? So I want to grab, I really, really, really want to show you this book. Miren qué belleza. Look at this cover. Isn't this beautiful? This cover, so let me tell you a little bit about this book. So I got a note from Marisel's publicist, and she said, you got to read this book. And she told me the setting of the book. It was late 19th century in Puerto Rico when we were a Spanish colony and transitioned to an American colony. And I said, esto me va a tomar mucho tiempo. This is going to be a hard book to read. Read it in a weekend. I was fascinated by the love story. I was fascinated about the history that Marisel discovered. Marisel Vera, I'm going to bring her up now because I don't like talking about her if she's not here. Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I don't think I can hear you, Marisel. This is awful. I don't know what I'm going to do. Déjame ver. No, I think it's her mic.
Ay, Dios. Okay, that's no good.
I have muted her and everything. She can hear me, but I can't hear her. I can do something real. You can call me over the phone and I can put you on speakerphone, Marisel. Let's do it real criollo. Okay? Because you don't have an IT guy like I have.
Yeah, that's not working.
And I can't make it work. Do you hear Marisel, guys? I don't hear Marisel. They can hear you, but I can't. You know what? I'm going to take this off. Vamos a ver si así funciona.
Try the other headphones.
I'm not going to try headphones anymore. I'm going to turn all the headphones off. A ver si ahora la oigo. Y esta computadora. Oh, technology. I've been waiting so long to talk to Marisel. Don't do this to me now. Deja ver. Let me see. You can hear us both, but I need to hear her. Because how is that conversation going to be? Si me llamas por teléfono.
Okay, I'll call you.
Yay, I hear you.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Sí.
Oh, for now on, my tech person is not leaving the premises. You can hear me?
Sí, absolutamente.
Great,
Okay.
great.
The book title is The Taste of Sugar. Marisel Vera was raised in Humboldt Park, graduated from Clemente High School, which she really wanted me to tell you. And like every good Puerto Rican that grows up in Humboldt Park, and I've said this many times, Marisel, I grew up in Puerto Rico. I became more Puerto Rican when I met my Boricuas from Humboldt Park, because you guys have an insatiable hunger to learn about your roots. But the true history, not necesariamente the history that I learned in my history books in Puerto Rico, because I come from this kind of family. My dad told me que los americanos llegaron y nos salvaron la vida. Y eso fue lo que me enseñaron en los libros a mí. No se hablaba específicamente of the transition between Spanish colony to U.S. colony. I would say that I wasn't comfortable calling Puerto Rico a colony of the United States until after Hurricane Maria. And the fact that I had to explain to people who we were, that we were U.S. citizens and so on. So when I start reading your book, I start discovering not only how the poor and the hardworking suffered during both colonizers, but also that trip to Hawaii. Me estoy adelantando, Marisel Vera. I've been dying to talk to you.
Good, I'm glad. So what you experienced, that's what Puerto Ricans here have experienced their whole lives. We didn't know where we came from. We were proud of being Puerto Rican, but why? And our parents couldn't answer the question. Like, my mother was an excellent student in Puerto Rico, but she didn't know the answers to any historical questions because it was intentional by the US government to teach American history. Until like the mid-1930s, the education minister in Puerto Rico was American, appointed by the President of the United States. And I think until the maybe, I don't know if it was the 60s or something like that, or the 50s, that in Puerto Rico, they could teach Puerto Rican history. They could teach in Spanish, because my mother's books were in English and the teachers were Puerto Ricans, but they were teaching from these English language books American history. So, you know.
How old is your mom?
I'm sorry?
How old is your mom?
My mom died a few years ago. She was 80. Yeah. So she grew up in the 30s and the 40s. She graduated in the 50s, in the 1950s from high school.
My mom graduated in 1956 from high school.
Okay, so more, my mother 54. You know, so this is like intentional erasure by the United States government, because it's a colony, and what happens when you're a colony? You want to keep the people who are your subjects, you know, not knowing about themselves, because if you know about yourself, your history, then you have some pride. And if you have some pride, what happens? You want change. And if you want change, what happens?
You might start demanding.
Revolution. If you have a revolution, what happens? We're American citizens. You're going to be tossed in prison, the way a lot of people in Puerto Rico have been tossed in prison for the last 100 years.
So you did a lot of research for this book, which is a historical novel based, as I said, in the end of the 19th century in Puerto Rico, when the United States, when we transitioned from being a Spanish colony to being a U.S. colony. And why did you make it a love story?
You know, transition is a lovely word, but okay, I'll accept it.
Esos hábitos die hard, and my dad is watching. Esos hábitos die hard.
And we'll have to have another conversation when we debate politics, right? Then we'll talk about the book. We'll need a lot of wine, maybe whiskey. I don't know that wine is going to cut it. We're going to need whiskey. Okay, but why? What was the question? Why did I write this book?
Why did you write a love story?
Oh, because it's a novel, and the way novels work, it's always about the people. It's always about, people read novels because they want to get into somebody else's life. And I love writing a love story. I'm very good at it. I'm very good at writing sex, and I embrace it. And I wanted to tell the story about Puerto Rico, colonialism and politics and everything maybe nasty or bad about Puerto Rico, and also the good. I wanted to celebrate the people of Puerto Rico. And the best way you can do it is in a love story, I think, because people can handle reading about hard things. I feel when you talk about love and when you talk about people and you talk about family, then people can handle it, handle the truth a little better, maybe.
Sí, a mí me supo mejor. Me supo mejor. Porque, I was reading about it, and it's such an interesting love story too, because this man who owns a small piece of land, a coffee plantation, and and he's trying to work it, and he falls in love with a woman who was predestined to marry rich and marry someone from downtown Ponce. And if you're from Puerto Rico, you know that Ponce es Ponce y lo demás es isla. This is a very Puerto Rican conversation. So if you're joining us on YouTube afterwards, you can Google all of this. But let us have this.
Or read my book, right? Ana, why not read my book instead? It'll be easy, it'll be fun. You can do
it. Anyway, so he falls in love with Valentina. And is it Valentina? Did I screw that up?
No, it's Valentina.
And they fall in love, and she is determined to make this marriage work, because it is a traditional marriage, but what you wrote is a very strong female character, because she wants to make the marriage work, but he respects her opinion.
Yeah, I think that's what the love story is, because when they first fall in love, it's like, you know how it is. Hopefully you know how it is. It's like the attraction. There's an attraction, there's a physical, but hopefully that'll last if you have a long marriage. It's an attraction, and it grows into a deep, profound love for each other that lasts. All the tragedies and difficulties that happen when you have a marriage, especially when things are the world's just changing around you, and you don't have money, and sometimes bad things happen to good people, and that's what happens to this couple. But their love grows instead of falls apart, which I think is something that I discovered when I was writing it. When I write, I don't start with how it's going to end. Usually I write thinking about a theme that I want to write about, something that really interests me, and then who's going to tell the story. And that's how I wrote this, my two main characters, and then I wanted to give Vicente a half-brother, because I wanted to talk about colorism and racism in the Puerto Rican culture, because we're not prejudiced, and I wanted to shine light on that, I think.
And you had families that supported both of them to a certain extent, because Valentina had a sister and parents who were constantly saying, we will take care of you, we will support you. They weren't extremely judgmental. They told her, they warned her when she married him. But after that, it was like, we will help you out. I have to describe it this way. It is beautiful to read a book where you recognize the smells and the scene that you're setting, and you can see the colors and hear the sounds. And it's even more beautiful when you learn history that you had no idea had it happened. I knew that we had a Puerto Rican population in Hawaii. I knew that they got there just like bootstrap because there were job opportunities. They never told me about their journey. I was never told about being indentured servants / slaves. And it is, I thank you so much for writing this book, and I wish there were more. I know your first book is about Operation Bootstrap as well. Why do you want to write about this type of history?
I think because my parents had to leave Puerto Rico in the 50s. They left separately to work, just to live. And my father's dream never came true of going back to Puerto Rico and getting that little finca in the mountains that he wanted. That's what he always wanted to do, to go back to Puerto Rico and have his little finca. And he died at a young age. And in my family, we think it was because of complications from working in the factories here in the United States. He was a welder, and the fumes and, those kinds of jobs. I know that when I was growing up in Humboldt Park, often many men a little bit older than my father we met on Division Street, or when we were in church, they were missing fingers and thumbs. And that was from the factories, working in the factories of Chicago. And you think that this story about Hawaii is unique to Hawaii and is unique to Chicago, but it's not, because the more you research history here in the United States, in New Jersey, in the 60s, they kept some people out in the farms, and they didn't treat them very well at all, Puerto Ricans. Sometimes the Puerto Ricans flew from Puerto Rico on these airplanes where their seats were like these folding chairs.
Yeah,
so it's like, yeah.
Como una guagua, like a bus.
Yes, it's just so interesting to me.
It is fascinating. When I finished the book, I saw all the research you had done. You spoke to Fernando Picó, who is one of our top historians. Easy to find this history.
No. And you know what? My husband always jokes about, how about if somebody needs to check this? And I'm like, good luck. Because if I had to do it, I would not be able to find. That's just a very, very small amount of the research that I did in the back of the book. I've been working on it since I don't know, like 2012, I would say. Yeah. So, good luck. But I have to say that was
contradicting you, right?
I'm sorry?
Good luck contradicting you, right?
Ana, I had I felt a lot of satisfaction last week, because I asked my editor to send the book to this Puerto Rican historian here in the US that has written a lot about Puerto Rican history. And I'm like, I always told my husband, the people I'm afraid of are the Puerto Ricans. The white people love me, but the Puerto Ricans, I don't know about the Puerto Ricans, because the Puerto Rican culture, they're like on you.
Oh yeah.
Any little thing, right? They want your success, but man, if you go, it's like, so, but he sent me a lovely email that he learned things. He wants to do an event with me in the future with the Centro New York. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Wonderful.
Deborah said, acabo de poner la orden por Amazon. I want this book, said somebody else. Ermina, who you know, says a true testament to the power of love and resilience. Absolutely. The other book, your first book, is called If I Bring You Roses. I can't wait to read that one.
Yeah, and I was talking about it today, and that the title makes it sound like a romance novel. The title, it was not my choice. My publisher at the time thought my original title was too Spanish and that people wouldn't be able to pronounce it. So they changed it. And when you're a nobody, they can do whatever they want when you're a nobody. And it was basically the character's name, and I had a Y, like E, Felicidad y Arriba, too Spanish. People won't be able to pronounce it. So we could have changed it to Anne, but hey, that's life.
You know what? That happens to me. People tell me all the time, you should Americanize your name. They're not going to understand it. And now they do.
Right?
Now I can say Anna with no problem.
Yeah. We have to, you were talking earlier about Valentina becoming a strong character. And one reason that this happened for Valentina is because, I don't know about you, but in my version of the Puerto Rican culture, I was raised to be subservient to men. That's the way my parents raised me. and my sisters. And it was, and I always rebelled against it. And I feel that in general, the female voice is silenced or isn't really expressed in literature and art and whatever. And I always want to make the female voice one of the prominent voices in my work. And I also like to write about the men, because I understand Puerto Rican men very well. My husband's Puerto Rican, but also because of my father, my uncles, and I understand that the journey, it's been, you know how they say pa'lante, or people always say, like I remember my father's generation, I would say, ask how you were, and they would say, luchando.
En la lucha.
En la lucha or lucha, yeah, en la lucha, siguiendo la lucha. And I feel like that is really true for Puerto Rican. It's like, you know, we get hit hard. What's happening in Puerto Rico now with the storm?
There's a storm now. There's a tropical storm right now.
Yeah.
I just texted my mother, ¿Cómo van?
Yeah, and it's just like, but you know, because we've had to be. Yeah, we will just deal with it, do the best we can, and keep, you know, siguiendo la lucha. And so that's why I want to write about men too, because I feel I want to celebrate us in my work.
I think I loved reading about a couple like this, because my parents were very much like them, a traditional marriage where my dad was the breadwinner and my mom had to stay home, and my mom could have been as successful as my dad, but the decision was made that my mom would raise my brother and I, and my mother raised me to be the way that I am now. You know, do not be a housewife. You guys have opportunities. I was in the 60s. I had to do this. And my dad respected my mother. My dad would hand the check over to my mother. My mom ran the house like it was a business. And if my dad had a decision to make, it was run through my mother. And my dad knew the potential that my mom had, but the circumstances were not there. The society wasn't there. And my mother would tell me, you need to, even if it's a part-time job, work, have your own money, make your own decisions. So I come from, but then again, when my mom would leave us, my brother and I alone, my brother's 6 years older than me, I had to cook for my brother, porque yo era la nena.
Right. My brother never did dishes when we were growing up, and you don't know how much I hated that. Oh my God.
Yo le quemaba el bistec, Marisel. I would burn his food.
One time I had to iron my brother.
He was so decent that he would eat it. And I'm like, yo no entiendo why I have to cook for you. You're 6 years older than me.
I had to iron my brother's shirt. So one time, because I had to iron his shirt, I burnt this big hole in it. And after that, I'm like, he's like ironing his up. Because I'm like, don't want to do this. I'm forced to do this. Okay, this is what you want. This is what you want.
Exacto. But I think that one thing I wanted to ask you, and I just wrote a one-woman show with my comadres Wendy Mateo and Lorena Diaz, and it is my story, and it is my story growing up in Puerto Rico and coming here, transitioning to the Anglo market and all that, and it took me forever to feel like the story was worthy or that people would understand it, right? And I remember, not to drop names, but a producer of mine asked Lin-Manuel Miranda for advice from me. And he said, tell her voice is important and her story is important to tell. But I found people who wanted to tell my story. You found publishers who wanted to publish your book. How hard was it to convince them about telling these stories that you tell in The Taste of Sugar, and also in If I Bring You Flowers?
Roses. I get confused too, let me tell you, because I always say Felicidad y Aniva. That's my dream. My dream is for it to be reissued in the hardcover with a different cover and a different title. Hello, universe. Okay.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, right. But when it comes to fiction, you need an agent. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that my agent is a white Jewish woman. Betsy Amster, and she's been my agent for, I don't know, for the first book too. and she has always had my back. I would send her drafts and she's like, oh, this is not really it, but you're getting closer. And I would work. I'm like the revision queen. Keep on rewriting and rewriting, and rejection is no good. But for me, it made me be a much better writer because I kept working at it. But each time, it was really hard for her to sell my book, I think, because I don't think it's so easy for Latinas. I don't know about Latinos. I guess the same for people of color to get their work out. Most of publishing is white. Everybody at my publisher is white. I have a fantastic editor. And my publisher, Live Right, has supported me 100%. When I didn't want to select one of the actors that was offered for me for the audiobook by the audio publisher, they totally supported me because I was holding out for a Latina. I'm like, I got to have a Puerto Rican, at least a Latina. And because of the pandemic, it made it so hard. They couldn't hire someone just to go into the studios. They needed somebody who was a professional. I had a professional studio, but I just was able to select somebody this week, and they're going to record in September, and it's a Latina. So I'm like, thank you, God.
That bothers me. Like, this happened when Saturday Night Live said, oh, but we can't find any Black funny women. You haven't looked.
No. And you know what? Here's the thing. Somebody told me today that they wanted to read a lot of Latina writers and they're looking them up. If you don't publish our books, how are there going to be 100 Latina writers out there with published books? When it comes to you, you don't even read them, or you say things like, I couldn't connect. This was my favorite thing, Ana. I'm going to tell you my favorite thing that just made me want to hit the bottle and not stop drinking for like days. My agent told me about this one editor who said he wanted to love the book because he has his house in Vieques, but he didn't want a history lesson. I'm telling you, this is the truth. I've been dying to say this story, even though people told me not to. But Ana, Ana, please respond to that one.
I got these women once in a round table in LA, and they told me that I was great, but I didn't have an edge. And they wanted a Latina with an edge.
It's like, man.
And I was like, well, what do you want me here to come in and like dance like J-Lo and, fight like Rosie Perez in a movie? And like, we're not, what?
Right.
I don't.
Right.
And like, how do you answer that? So you live in Vieques, you have a house in Vieques, but you're not in Vieques.
No, and even if you're in Vieques, so you have a house in Vieques, you got this house, why? Because the land is cheap. Why? Let's think about why. And you don't want to know anything about the people from that land? It's okay to go to the grocery store and go to the golf course and go to the hotels where there you see the people in the land, maybe even to go to listen to salsa if you're really cool. But you don't want to know anything about us. What does it say about you?
What does that say about you? I cringe after the hurricane. When I would be in line to the airplane, my husband would laugh. My husband's a nice Jewish guy. And he would catch me like looking at like Americanos and be like, so why are you going to Puerto Rico? Oh, well, there is investment opportunities, and my skin.
That's capitalism. That's
I got my skin.
That's after Maria, and that's also my book. Remember, there's a San Ciriaco, disaster capitalism after San Ciriaco.
I wanted to ask you about that. So, porque ella casi no tiene historia aquí, because there's no history here. You will find out about Puerto Rico colonized by the Spanish, then colonized by the U.S., moving to Hawaii as indentured servants. But right before that, Hurricane San Ciriaco hits, and we've all heard the stories of how awful it was. Well, guess what? The help from the Americanos didn't show up. So they go from being a colony of the Spaniards to the Americans showing up, waving the flag, saying, we will save you. We'll be your saviors. Ciriaco shows up in Puerto Rico, destroys everything, and the help doesn't show up. And what you described sounds so much about my aha moment after Maria, right? Because as I told you, I was raised by parents who, when Luis Muñoz Marín got us the citizenship, things changed, right? people stopped being hungry, the university improved, they could be educated. But my parents gave the credit to the Americans, and my parents went to college in the States, and my parents had that mentality of we just have to be grateful and not bite the hand that feeds us, and they will save us. And when I had to tell my dad, because he couldn't see it, that Trump said that everything was fine and he was tossing paper towels at people when he went to visit, you could hear the disappointment in his voice, right? And that's your description of San Ciriaco is exactly the same.
Maria, Ana, listen, we're going to have a totally different conversation to discuss Muñoz Marín, because I got lots to say about him. And I really put that in another book. But when it comes to like San Ciriaco, remember that the governor of Puerto Rico, how he wrote the Thanksgiving after San Ciriaco, and he said everything is lovely in Puerto Rico, everything is so great. Didn't our president say that? Or not really my president, but didn't the president say that here? That everything was good? It's like what's happening now happened before. Nothing is new under the sun. And that to me is just so fascinating, because this book was already way past the Hurricane San Ciriaco section when Hurricane Maria happened. I'm like, oh my God, it's just like Hurricane San Ciriaco. Seriously.
Oh, you were already in this.
This book was, I've been working on it since 2012. So I had already written that thing, I don't know, 2016 or something. And then I'm the kind of writer where I write a lot of drafts, because every time I go back to my writing, I discover something new. Even the very last draft, I discovered something new about Valentina that I didn't know was true about Valentina. And that's what I love about writing, because I'm not a writer that can plot. I wish I were, because I think I would be a lot faster, but I'm not. I go into writing with an idea of what I want to write about. And here it was Spanish and American colonialism and how it affected Puerto Rico and why we need to know our history. And from there, I think, who's going to tell my story? Valentina, I need a woman. I'm going to give her a husband, Vicente, because I need a sister to go to San Juan. San Juan, so that I could find out what's happening in San Juan. So, okay, she's going to have this husband who's going to go to San Juan. They're going to communicate through letters. That's the kind of like the way it works for me.
Oh, yeah. I know that there are writers reading us right now, and I know that some people were asking that they want to contact you to talk about publishing and all that. But how did you get an agent?
The way when I got an agent, it might have been a tiny bit easier. I don't think it's ever easy, but when I was getting an agent, which was maybe 15 years ago, you were able to submit 20 pages, like your first chapter of your book, so they could see, oh, I like her writing. Like for me, I like her writing. I like the story. There might be something in it. I submitted this one book, coming of age novel that has not been published, called The Liberation of Carmela Lopez. And so my agent read that, and she thought I had some kind of talent. And then from there, we started a relationship. Now you can only submit, from what I've been reading, 3 pages. So it has to be your best 3 pages. And 3 pages. And you know what? In a way, it makes kind of sense, because like when you go to the bookstore, you open up a book and you can usually tell if you like the book or you might be interested in the first 3 pages, right?
See.
So that's the first 3 pages. They judge you on your writing and your story. But basically, when it comes to the agent makes money if you make money. They make 15% of whatever you make on your book. So they have to believe, they have to love your work, because basically I think agents love reading. Nobody, I think, maybe gets into publishing if you don't love it.
Right.
I don't think it's like a big, they make big bucks.
No, they don't.
So you have to, they have to love your work and believe that they can sell you. And how can more of us Latinas be published? Yeah. We got to buy the books by Latinos and Latinas, because money talks. When it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to plays, you got to go to the plays. with Latino actors, Latina playwrights, the same for the movies. And if you don't do it, they're going to think there's no money. And if there's no money, they're not going to hire you. They're not going to buy your book. So it's really important to support all of us.
Amazon. We can find it in Amazon. Ella me dijo que lo pueden encontrar donde quiera.
Anywhere. But I think with writers, if you don't know anything about writing, there's this group that I went to a couple sessions of, and it's called workshops. It's called VONA, VONA, and it's like an artist collective.
Okay.
For people of color. Nobody like there's a lot of Latino writers, African American. You could find probably your favorite writer teaching a class there, and maybe you want to take a class. You want to take a class in poetry. I took one once a long time ago with Cristina Garcia, who's my favorite author, and I think she's a brilliant teacher. She doesn't teach there anymore, but she might be teaching somewhere else. So find who your favorite writer is, see if they're teaching a class. Take their class and get inspired and write, and then try it. There's no guarantee. It's just like acting. There's no guarantee, but if you don't try, you're not going to go anywhere.
My friend Berta is asking if you have plans to publish the book in Spanish.
I am hoping for a Spanish publisher. Could somebody contact a Spanish publisher and say, please publish Marisel's book. Please buy her book. Because that's the way it works. I have my agent has a sub-agent in Europe who's trying to sell it to Spain. And she said it's a hard sell. I don't know what's up with the Spaniards. Don't they like Puerto Rican?
No, that's another conversation with Whine.
Okay.
Conversation with Whine. I don't know, because I have to say, I love Spanish culture. And a lot of our idiosyncrasies and our vocabulary comes from Spanish ancestry. So yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't want to read you. The Taste of Sugar, you can get it anywhere where books are sold. Marisel, someone else was asking if there is a independent bookstore owned by people of color that we could buy these types of books.
I think you could get it anywhere. Right now, because of the pandemic, I think that my publicist was saying that a lot of bookstores, they're not like before. You know how they used to have you could just go to an independent bookstore and then find all these books. Well, because of the pandemic, maybe you have to order in advance and then they'll ship it to you. But that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to support independent bookstores, and I buy books all the time and ordering it and getting it sent to my house.
Volumes bookstore in Logan Square in Wicker Park does a really good job with local writers, with writers of color. I've discovered writers of color there that I didn't know existed. We have to promote these, because the reason I've been reading a lot of literature, not only from Marisel, but from Black female writers, is because I follow people on Instagram that are more famous than me that tell me to read it. It's that pathetic. Reese Witherspoon tells me to read the book by Marisel, and I say, "Ay, sí, tan mona, let me go buy it," right?
She doesn't know about my book. Somebody's got to tell her.
Don't worry, she will. Marisel, once you read the book, to go to Amazon and write a review. We need great reviews, and we need you to purchase it, and we need you to post that you've read it and you've loved it. If you didn't love it, we don't want to hear from you.
I like the way you think, Ana. Mi comadre over here.
Don't say anything. Punto y se acabó. Another thing I have to tell you about my upbringing.
We can't be nice Puerto Rican women anymore. You know what? Nice Puerto Rican women do not get ahead. And why do we want to be nice? Right? And people have to pronounce our name right. That's all I got to say.
You know how hard it's been for them to say Ana. They adoran. It's taken 15 years. But hey, so I have to where was I going with this? I had a different upbringing, obviously, because I grew up in Puerto Rico, and my parents support statehood. My brother is independentista, so the conversations at home were amazing. Everyone tolerates each other, and everyone listens to each other. My parents enough wine, they their ideas pretty quick. So I think you all have to read this book. So because this is also the experience of a lot of immigrants too. This is not just a Puerto Rican reality. So I think if you're not Puerto Rican, you will appreciate it too. If you are not Latina, you will appreciate it too. The Taste of Sugar, you can find it on Amazon. And you know, Marisel, you're paving the way, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wrote this book kind of like to claim Puerto Ricanness for myself and for my family, because if you grow up someplace like Chicago, and it was easier for you in a way because you were in Puerto Rico, you already had that foundation. But we're here, and we have to try to figure out how to live in these two worlds. And if we know where we're at, where we're coming from, well, then the next time somebody tells us to get back on the boat, we could say, excuse me, I'm here because the U.S. military invaded Puerto Rico in 1898. That's why I'm here. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. But, you know, it's really interesting because I was telling friends of mine that there are habits that are hard to break. And when I got to Chicago and the Puerto Rican community embraced me the way they did, it took a while for my parents to understand why I was changing my mind and why I wasn't buying what they were selling me anymore. And then I'm very lucky because with time they have changed their minds about a lot of things, and I've been able to trace in their upbringing where they were also not part of the problem but victimized in some way, or they were thinking that way because it was the way they were raised. And yes, we've had many opportunities as citizens because we can come here without a visa and we can go back and forth and so on, but nonetheless we do live the immigrant experience as well.
Yeah, I think so, because of the way we're treated here, and really in Puerto Rico too. But I think with your parents, because of their age, that was around my parents' age, they were also afraid of communism. They were afraid of Castro. And so it was always, we got to really stay close to the Americans because we don't want Castro come and make everything communist. And I know in my family, especially, that was a big thing for my mother because my aunt married a Cuban and she ended up in Cuba. She and her husband actually worked for the revolution. And at some point they were disillusioned. But my mother didn't get to see her sister for so many years. Her sister didn't get out of Cuba to see her mother in Puerto Rico. So my mother was very afraid of communism for that reason.
Yeah. Marisel, I can't wait to read your first book because now I'm going to keep reading. Any other authors that we should be looking at?
Well, I love Cristina Garcia. Mm-hmm. I'm another, she's Cuban. And a young author who's Dominican, her name is, I think her name is Elizabeth Acevedo. Mm-hmm. And she wrote a young adult book, which is written in kind of like poetry, but it's really beautiful. But I say read all Latina writers. Google Latina writers and read everybody, because I don't know that any of them are, maybe one or two might be bestsellers, and that's not a lot. And don't we give the love to all of us? So,
and that's what was interesting today. You were texting me like, I want to be a bestseller, and I was like, oh yeah, that's wonderful. But then I realized the repercussions of you being a bestseller, because it shows publishers, agents, that we are worth time.
I'll say that again. Repercussions has a negative connotation. So
okay, it would be like, pues ya, pues búscame otra palabra because you're the writer. The result of it, right? It's for the bigger picture. Not only for us, it's for the bigger picture.
And I think, if I sell, if I become a bestseller, it'll be so much easier for the next, seriously, for the next agent to sell another Marisel's book or another Ana's book, because they know that people will buy it. And that's really what it's about. Unfortunately, it's a business. And we don't want it to be a business, but because we want it to be I want it to be just for the love of the art. If I could, I would be like in the old days, I would have been one of those writers just in my little hovel and never have to speak to anybody and just write. But I've been told I can't do that. So I have to, come and talk to you and drink wine and get through that.
Por lo menos, at least I'm letting you drink wine.
Eres buena gente, so I mean, it's okay. Mi comadre.
Honestly, Marisel,
Scary.
so happy that I read this book, that it taught me so much, that it's called The Taste of Sugar. Marisel has 2 published novels. This is her latest. And you're going to love it just as much as I did. And if you do, write a great review on Amazon.
Friends.
And tell your friends. Friends. Marisel, thank you.
All the ideas, Ana? I said, do I have all the ideas? Start a book club, you know.
Well, you know, I have a goddaughter who's like she reviews books for Instagram and so on. And I was like, read this. And she's 20 something years old. And I know she's going to love it. And I know she's going to discover parts of her mom that she's going to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, you know? So I think it's just a beautiful book. Go pick it up wherever you love getting books. Someone wrote also Semicolon is a great bookstore here in Chicago. Marisel, what an honor to talk to you. I'm so glad we did it.
Thank you so much.
And now nos quedan como 3 conversaciones pendientes.
When this is over, we got to meet.
We got to meet in person.
We got to meet in person.
With an agenda.
Right.
Topic number 1, topic number 2. And then I'll put my dad on speakerphone. Y el pobre.
Okay, well.
El pobre, right? He's
maybe
like,
Munoz Marin conversation with your dad out of respect.
Exacto. Now, you know, in hindsight, we learn a lot, right? In hindsight, we learn a lot.
Yes. I'm like, I gotta write something about him in my next novel. I just got it.
So do you have anything in the works?
Yeah, I'm actually working on this novel called The Girls from Humble Park. And it's going to be set in the 1970s, like with the time I grew up. And I'm going to go back to their parents. And this is where I bring in Munoz Marin. I think I brought Munoz Marin because he was very influential with Operation Bootstrap in my first novel. So basically, my thrill is to call out all the Puerto Ricans who I think are sellouts or who have done things that I do not approve of. That's like an added pleasure to doing it to the Americans. The Americans first, and then I go for the Puerto Ricans. Nobody is safe.
Oh, goodness.
That's of being a fiction writer. I love it.
Right. I love it. All right, Marisel, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. You have so many great people that are going to buy your book, and I'm very, very excited about that.
Thank you, Ana.
Have a good night. All right, so The Taste of Sugar, you could get it on Amazon, wherever you love your books. And also, because we had kind of like a rocky start, and the author is Marisel Vera, who we just spoke with. Tell me what you think. If you love her book, write a review. And I want to tell you about these wines I have over here, because they were today courtesy of my amazing friends at Bottles and Cans in Lincoln Square. And they're putting together summer packs to raise funds, or part of the funds of these summer packs, which will include different amounts of bottles of wine. They're going to go benefit the Lincoln Square Ravenswood Chamber of Commerce. They do a lot for that community. And also that wine store is amazing, and they take care of you and tell you exactly what you need. And if I want to give you the website to go to, Lisa sent it to me, my friend Lisa, so that you can go to lincolnsquare.org. You have to place those orders by tonight. lincolnsquare.org. And the name of the program is Lincoln Square Ravenswood Summer Mix Pack. So the one that I've been enjoying today is this cold red wine, La Brusca. So let's see. I have my glasses on. I'll tell you right now. Okay. Serve chilled. I can't see what this is from. Imported. Product of Italy. It's Italian. I was like, don't tell me this is from Manhattan. It's Italian and it is delicious. And if you don't like to drink red wine, kind of room temperature in this weather, then try that. It's really good. I'm going to tell Robin Baumgarten, because as you know, my Robin loves her red wine with ice, which is ludicrous, but you do you, boo. All right. So great conversation with Marisel about the taste of sugar. Quite her mission, right? And remember what she said. If you want to see more people of color and more diversity in publishing, we got to buy the books. Same thing with entertainment. You got to watch the movies. You got to support theater. I know it's hard right now, but there are a lot of virtual options. You can buy books online, and you have the time to do all this reading and researching and write great reviews. And hopefully we can make these people bestsellers. Would you like to find out more about like different books that you could read? Because I'm thinking about having my goddaughter in one of these so she can talk about the books she's read, and I can tell you about all the books I've been reading during quarantine. I love to read. Daughters of the Stone, Naida, I've never read that. I want to read it. If you are watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Marisel, author of The Taste of Sugar. I'm sorry that we had a little rocky start, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next Wednesday. My comadres, Wendy Mateo and Lorena Diaz, are going to join us. All right, so we will see you then. Un beso, los quiero. Take care. Wear your masks.